A new $66 million federal grant will help boost freight train safety between Broomfield and Westminster. And state leaders are also hoping it creates opportunities for passenger rail transit like Front Range Passenger Rail, which would help millions move between Pueblo, Denver, and Fort Collins.
But a different rail project is also on people's minds right now.
The section that folks are particularly concerned with right now in terms of execution is the Denver to Longmont segment. And this portion of funding is going to help kickstart that portion a little bit.
All right, Denver 7's Veronica Coast has been following this one all day long and joins us in the studio.
And Veronica, that portion is called Northwest Rail. What can you tell us about that rail transit project?
You know, the Northwest Rail project, that is really interesting because in theory, it would connect Denver, Boulder, and then Longmont. But you guys, we're talking about 41 miles of line here. This is still very much a dream of sorts. This project has had several delays, lots of challenges in development as well, including some major cost increases. That's because of the kind of infrastructure this project would require. So here's where that grant money that you all mentioned that the state just received comes in. State leaders and advocates are hoping one day the rails they plan to improve with this money can hold some of those passenger trains too. Again, still a future goal, but one that rail riders have been asking for a long, long time. And state leaders, they said that this money will help them get closer to that finish line, though it is important to mention that finish line is still a ways away.
But part of the Northwest Rail is already built.
It is, almost 6 miles of it. So 5.7, that's what we know of as the B line. That was finished back in 2016. It runs between Union Station and Westminster. The rest, though, won't be finished until the money is there, and who knows when the money's going to be there.
All right, we'll keep following this project. Veronica Acosta reporting live in the studio for us tonight. Veronica, thank you.
Veronica, thank you. Let's take this in depth here. A high-speed rail line from Denver to Vail has been talked about for decades now. In 2001, it was put before Colorado voters on a statewide ballot and would have used $50 million in TABOR refunds to test a Denver to Vail monorail system. Well, opponents at that time argued it would cost an estimated $4 billion to construct this 160-mile elevated monorail from DIA to the Eagle County Airport. It failed. So 2004 now, CDOT explored the idea of a conventional train for the mountain corridor that could hit speeds of up to 90 miles per hour to ease traffic on I-70. But because of all the tight turns, they determined 40 miles of new tunnels would have to be built. That cost soared above $5 billion, so that one was ultimately scrapped. And then earlier this year, the state legislature passed a bill to impose a $3 a day fee on all rental cars to help pay for a new mountain rail line. The tax will be imposed in 2025, but that's only going to amount to about $50 million per year. It would use an existing passenger rail line from Denver to Winter Park and then eventually extend up to Steamboat using an existing coal rail line. Although the measure passed, the feasibility is still being studied.
Even if you don't think about freight every day, it affects the prices you're paying in the store. And part of how we've been able to get inflation back down has been improving our supply chains.
U.S. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg reached out to Denver 7 to talk about his new infrastructure investment, and Denver 7's Micah Smith got to interview him. So, Micah, can you tell us why the secretary wants to do new investments here in Colorado?
Yeah, so when we think about rail, we think what an old form of transportation. But the truth is, so many of our goods get through our country using rail. So Secretary Buttigieg told me Colorado's in the middle of the country, so many of those goods going by rail are coming through our state. And so to make sure that the economy is in good shape, that we can keep inflation low, he says it's important to invest in rail, specifically in Colorado, to literally keep things moving through our state, keep things on track, and to get goods where they need to go.
We all want our packages on
We
time.
all do.
I know that the infrastructure investment encompasses a lot of things. Any other specific investments for Colorado?
One that I found really interesting was $47 million towards improvements along US 287. And this is specifically for animal crossings, or I should say a large portion of that money will go toward animal crossings. I had to ask him, why animal crossings? He says along this corridor, 1/3 of crashes involving vehicles involve a vehicle hitting an animal. And so to improve safety along that corridor could quite literally, in his words, save lives. So that's a huge investment. And not only will that help improve safety, but again, it'll keep things moving along that corridor. We know how often we hear about a crash on 287 just shutting things down for hours. So
another important investment. Micah Smith for us tonight. Thank you, Micah.
And looking closer here, transportation also a big topic for voters this election. So depending on where you live, you could have 2 RTD-related bubbles on your vote to fill out. Now, ballot issue 7A asks voters to let RTD permanently keep all sales tax revenue instead of refunding it through Tabor checks. Additionally, anyone living in certain RTD districts will vote on a new board of directors representative. 8 of the 15 RTD board seats are up. Board members' main job really is to hire a general manager for RTD, approve RTD's budget, and gather community feedback.